Jazzcast Pros.
If you're looking to step out of the corporate world and become an entrepreneur, then you want to tune in to today's story as our special guest, Christina Smith, shares her journey of leaving her corporate job and becoming a full-time entrepreneur and also an author. And she will share what the acronym S.H.I.F.T stands for. And the title of her book is Inviting Shift. So stay tuned. Welcome to Fearless Fridays with Maryann, the podcast to help you get unstuck, heal your inner child, and reshape your future. I am your host, Maryann Rivera-Dannert, and with over 10 years of experience as a coach, author, speaker, and owner of MRD Empowerment Solutions, I use my personal life experience with trauma, healing, and rediscovery as a catalyst for personal growth. My mission is to empower you to discover and unlock your full potential, paving the way to a life marked by freedom and balance. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff and find the strength within to rise above. Thank you so much for being with us today. So you are known as someone who can, work with women to make sure that they are connected, confident, and impactful. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us about your journey to becoming, this type of coach? What was missing that you noticed out in society, maybe within yourself, that led you down this path?
Yeah. It's been quite a journey, huh? Well, when I looked at it, I was in the corporate world once, and there was a mid-30s. I was crying on the way to work every day, and I couldn't figure out why, because I checked all the boxes, right? I had gotten my college degree. I got the good job. My job was fine. The people there were beautiful. I had a great husband. I had a house. I checked all the boxes, and I couldn't figure out why I was so depressed. Like, what was going on here that I could be so depressed, even though I have everything that I wanted, I thought, right? And that's when I got into therapy, and she asked me this question about, what is it that you want, Christina? And I was like, well, I want to be a good mom and I want to be a good wife. And she's like, no. What is it that you want for yourself? Not who you want to be for other people, but what is it that you actually want for yourself? And I don't think that I had ever really thought about it that way. Like, what did I want for myself? Isn't what I want for myself supposed to be how I serve other people? And that's when I started realizing that the health issues I had and a lot of other things were kind of all wrapped up in this ball of stress I had become to get so much external validation and constantly seeking that external validation. And then I did a lot of work. I became a health coach at first, and I realized I didn't really like talking about calories and weight and all of that stuff. And I really started looking at life coaching because I wrote a book. I got to this point in health coaching where I was like, everybody was coming to me and they knew what they needed to do. They knew they needed to exercise more. They knew that they needed to drink water. They knew that they needed to eat whole foods. Like, it's not really that much of a secret, right? And my thought was like, why can't we translate that into actual action? And so I wrote a book called Inviting Shift about how we make transformation actually happen. And I worked primarily with women. And I realized I work with a lot of midlife women, and what they want really isn't necessarily about their weight or their energy. They want to feel confident. They want to feel connected to other women and themselves, and they want to feel impactful. And so that's who I work with today, is primarily midlife women who are looking to kind of reignite who they are, or maybe discover who they are for the first time outside of being a mom, an employee, boss, whatever they are. But really what they want to do for themselves and how they can self-validate is a huge piece of what I do, because that was my journey of like, I want to feel good about what I do. I don't want to depend on external validation and other people telling me whether or not I'm doing, because we all know you can put something on the internet. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. So trying to get everyone to agree on that external validation is such a losing race.
Yeah, that's so true. And you have shared a lot in that short time.
Yeah.
So starting to, unpack that. So you were in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And you felt that something was missing. Mm-hmm. So, and you went through therapy, and having been asked that one pivotal question and pressed on it, what do you want for yourself? And as you mentioned, oftentimes, especially as women, we always answer that when it comes to our children, our significant other, our work, our friends, and things like that, but never for ourselves. So what was some of the work that you did that helped you peel back those layers to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I started going back to, because it was like I didn't even know I had been raising kids and working and being a good wife for so long. I had no idea what I was interested in. It was like if I had spare time, what would I do? I have no idea, right? Luckily, at that time, I also joined a community called Woman Within, which is all about women's empowerment and women's circles. And so I started sitting with women in circles. And that's one thing that really impressed me was like, I didn't realize I didn't trust women before. And then I went on a weekend and I sat in circle and I started to really trust women. And the more that I trusted women, the more that I trusted myself and vice versa. So I started listening to the inner wisdom of myself and of other women. And really, it's probably the first time in my life I could say that I felt like spiritually grounded and felt good within my soul. And so it was really by sitting with them and then trying to rediscover some of the things that I've always wanted to do but never tried. So for like a year, I had bought all of the painting things that I could possibly need to paint a picture. And I sat and stared at that canvas for a year. And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
yes. And my friend was just like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, I just don't know what to paint. And she's like, it doesn't matter. We're not here to make a masterpiece. Put some colors on the canvas and swish them around. She's like, it's the journey, not necessarily the product. Like it's enjoying what you're doing, not necessarily what you get out of it. So that's when I started doing a lot more art. And I started realizing I was becoming a leader in the women's community. And that was like shocking to me too. So it was really, for me, it was starting to align with how I really wanted to feel in my life. And once I started putting more of those things in my life, a lot of knowledge came out of it, like a lot of information about, oh, this is who I am. Without being all these things for other people, I am an artist. I am a leader. I am, really wise inside. But I never would have known that if I didn't allow myself to, one, stop producing, right? Because everything I did had to be of productive value. It had to be a checkbox somewhere rather than just being. Yeah, and that was where I started uncovering it. So sometimes when women are like, what are the steps that I need to take in order to find my passion? It's like, stop doing everything.
Right.
And just enjoy yourself, and something will come out of that. Like we will find it. Am I an artist that sells thousands of dollars of paintings? No, but I sure enjoy my time, which then makes the rest of the things that I do, right? It's just in alignment with what I want. And so when we do things that are in alignment, other things that are in alignment start popping up, opportunities and options. And that's really how I became a life coach. I mean, 20-year-old me would be completely shocked right now. Like, is that even a job?
It is, and it's a great one.
No, it is. And it's a great one for those who it fits. It doesn't fit everybody, but for me, somehow it's magically become the thing.
I
And
love them.
yeah, it never would have if I would have just kept going to my job. So I guess my big message is a lot of times we're not finding these things because we're settling for where we are rather than like actually actively living life. We're just kind of in this comfort zone. So sometimes we have to leave that comfort zone.
What was the transition like from leaving your corporate job and becoming an entrepreneur? So what were some of the steps that you took to become ready?
Well, I had been coaching part-time for a couple of years before I actually left. I'm lucky enough that I had a husband that was very supportive. That was like, okay, this sounds scary, but we're going to try it, right? Because starting any business is kind of scary. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. And it was a struggle for a while. There was a lot of things I went through that I didn't realize were related to the struggles I had in the corporate world. Like I realized I'm the one who's pushing myself to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, not my bosses. Like it was my expectations that were creating problems in both lives, like the before and after. And so I had to start re-looking at it because especially as an entrepreneur, I thought, well, I'll build this business twice as fast if I work 80 hours a week, right? And it was terrible. I don't suggest that ever to anyone. In fact, the less I work, the better my business is altogether. It sounds weird, but if I work over 35 hours a week, I'm probably not going to attract the same business. And it was really for me learning not to do everything, but to do the right things and the things that felt in alignment with me. Because whenever I followed a coach that was like, oh no, you have to do it X, Y, and Z this way, and it didn't feel right within me, it didn't work. It didn't work. And so for me, it was like learning to relax into my gifts rather than try to force a whole bunch of growth. And I know that sounds weird, but it's like instead of I would do all the hard stuff first. So by the time I got to the fun stuff, I was too exhausted and then it was no longer fun. And so by starting with the things that I'm actually gifted with, I can delegate a lot of the other stuff, or I can just say, I'm not doing that.
And I love that. And that's very different than the corporate mindset, the corporate world mindset, because the corporate world shows you and teaches you that you have to do the hard stuff first, because that's when you're energized and you're more active and things like that. And then you tackle the little stuff because it'll be done faster and things like that. But it's the opposite when you're an entrepreneur, especially for yourself.
Oh, yeah, because if not, then it's like, what am I even doing this for if I'm just constantly doing hard stuff? And I mean, there's people you can hire to do hard stuff. I just want to put that out there for people. Like, don't hire out the places where your gifts are, hire out where you're not so great. I truly believe in leaning into our gifts rather than trying to fix the weakest link, right? There are some things that, like, I'm not great at accounting. I'm never going to be great at accounting. I'm good at balancing my money and understanding how much I'm going to spend. But why would I go and learn accounting and do all of that when I can just hire that out, right? I mean, that just seems silly. But there are some people who think that they're doing the best for their business by learning all the hard stuff. Like, learn something. I need to know something about accounting to make sure that my accountant's not, shady or anything. But the details, no, I don't need to know all that. And like for me, social media now, it moves so fast that like I don't want to keep up with it. That's not my gift. And so I'd rather have somebody else, tell me what needs to be done in that area and how I can support them to do it for me. So really learning to lean into your gifts is so much more important than trying to fix all of your flaws. That just seems counterintuitive, because my job, like coaching, is my gift. I want to spend more time there. I want to spend more time sharing my wisdom on podcasts than, writing social media posts and making pretty little pictures and stuff. That's somebody else's job. Somebody else is gifted at that. Let them do it.
Correct. Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something that I just want to dig in a little deeper. You said that when you were working in the corporate world, your expectation of yourself was to work 50, 60, 80 hours a week. Your employer. Where did that mindset come from? And how were you able to undo it?
Yeah. The 80s, immigrant parents. Like my mother was firstborn American. So what I'm realizing, I just moved back to my husband's hometown and his family, which in his life, family is first. In my life, growing up, work was always first to everyone in the house, right? Whether that was the kids doing the housework or the parents doing the many jobs that they did, work was focused. And, I always grew up with the motto that, hey, if you want to be as good as the boys, you're going to have to work twice as hard. And I really took that to heart, that perfectionism and people pleasing became two really important characteristics of mine that I just learned how to be fast, be quick, and do a lot of work. And there's a lot of women who have the same mindset. And it's crazy because I feel like Nobody's really expecting that. In fact, what I had to learn to do is start going into my boss and go, I have these 12 things on my list. What's most important? I can't do them all today. And so asking for help or asking for guidance is a huge piece that I was really independent. I wasn't going to ask for help. And so learning how to communicate in good ways has been really helpful for me. I really came with that mindset that the harder you work, the faster you get that American dream, right? And you work hard. And if you're not making it, then you're not working hard enough. And I don't think it's about hard. I really think it's about us not valuing ourselves and the unique gifts that we have.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned the American dream because I love traveling, especially to like foreign countries and things like that, particularly like the European culture and the Spanish culture in Europe, like Spain, Italy, that they shut down for like a month at a time. There's no work whatsoever. People take like 3-hour lunches and things like that. It would be interesting to find out like where did this thing come from about living the American dream? Because if anything, I want to live the foreign dream.
Me too. Call me an expat. Give me a 2-hour lunch break.
Right. It's like we're always going, but we don't see other countries doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? We are, I mean, we could get into the politics of it, but it's really a capitalist country is where it comes down to, unfortunately. And the culture is different. And we can not choose that culture anymore. And in fact, there's so many people that complain about like Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And it's like, I think they're smart. Like, I am only working the hours you're paying me. I'm not doing the overtime unless I'm getting paid for it extra. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for an employer that can replace me tomorrow. I mean, let's be real, And so I kind of envy them. I'm like, part of me is like, maybe I was born in the wrong generation, but then I think about the technology and I'm like, oh no, I wasn't.
So you are also an author and your book, Inviting Shift. And I love that because as the saying goes, knowledge is power. But I always say, no, there's another extra step because you can read all the books in the world. You can go to all the webinars, listen to all the podcasts. But unless you take action, that's when it becomes life-changing. There's that action piece that a lot of people don't do. So tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, I love that. I always think of the quote Maya Angelou said that, once we know better, we do better. And I'm like, no, we don't. No, we don't. We can know so much. And like you said, until we take action. So the book is really based on the 5 stages of shift. And shift is an acronym for that. So the first one is something ain't right. So it's when something comes up and we start going, I feel not so great about this anymore. Like my job, let's take that for example. Like suddenly I was like, why does this suddenly feel so hard when I was showing up to work and everything was fine before? And then the H is when we start honing in and we start going, what is the problem here? What is the challenge? What is the struggle? And, what's going on for me? So often that's starting to feel into our bodies, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of us who have taught that feeling doesn't matter. But I think feeling matters more than anything. And starting to feel like, what is going on for me? I is the I got it stage. And this is where we know people to stop because they're like, I get it. In order to be healthier, I just need to drink more water and exercise and eat the whole foods. No problem. I solved it. No sugar. But then comes the F stage, and you can use any F word you want here, but it really stands for fortitude or fear. So we either have the fortitude to keep making the healthy choices that we want, the choices that align with what we want, or we fall back into fear and that default behavior, which is, going back to eating those 12 Twinkies at night in the middle of the night. And that's the hardest stage. That's where, the grit comes out. That's where we have to make really uncomfortable choices. And I think what people forget about the discomfort is that's where the growth is. Often when we get uncomfortable, we want to just shut down and run away or be like, oh, this is too hard.
Right.
but we're not unsafe, right? That's why I have to keep reminding my clients. I always ask them, is this unsafe or uncomfortable? And they're like, oh, it's just uncomfortable. And I'm like, right. So we can get through the discomfort. But as long as it's a safe action. And most of the time, we confuse safety with discomfort. And those are two different things. So usually, there's no bear chasing us. We're just creating our own anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's really getting through that F stage. And then T is transformation. And usually, what happens is we're like, oh, yay, I changed this thing. But as soon as we stop looking at it, then we can go right back into the whole cycle. So, and transformation's like an onion. So even though we've transformed, well, then that layer of the onion comes off. And then we're in another cycle of taking off another layer of that onion. So going deeper on that. In the book, there's just some really great questions you can ask yourself in each part of the cycle so we can stop hitting our heads and hopefully embrace transformation, which makes it a little bit easier to get through. Yeah, and there's some tools in there to help us. I always make up words. My clients laugh at me all the time, but reperspectivize. We can get a new perspective on really what's going on for ourselves so that hopefully it will make it easier to make some shift.
And that's really good because, as you said, we know better, but it's just, again, taking that action, because just being totally transparent, I know that there are other choices that I need to be making as far as like health and wellness and things like that. I have a whole gym set up in my basement. There's a bike, weights, kettlebells, mats, everything. And I don't do any of it. And I think it's just that conscious choice. And I think that once we take that first step, as the saying goes, that first step is always the hardest step, because once you take that first step, then it's easier to take the next one and then the next one and focus in the now and then. Don't worry about planning out your workouts or drinking more water for the rest of the week. Focus on today. Once you tackle and achieve today, you'll stand up, you'll sit up a little, higher and straighter. You'll be more confident, and it will be a little easier to do it the next day and the next day and the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and this works for entrepreneurs as well. It's not just about our health and wellness. That's just the easiest one because we all have to do that, right?
Right.
But even for entrepreneurs, you hate doing Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives. Well, you just keep doing them every day. You just focus on the one that you're doing today. And it's going to get easier as you do it. If you don't like writing newsletters, you don't like whatever it is that you need to do, putting ads out there, doing podcasts, whatever it is, you just keep doing it. It's just like tying your shoes, right? It was really hard at first, but once you just keep practicing and practicing, and yeah, it's uncomfortable to make ourselves do that. But what I'd love everybody to tap into is after they do the good thing for themselves, because we all know we feel better when we come out of the gym than when we go in, right? So, but if we can tap into that feeling after we have done the thing, right, then I can be like, oh, yes, I feel good. Remember this feeling, body. This is why we go to the gym. This is why we do the hard things, because when we're done doing the hard things, it feels really good. And I think that sometimes we forget that getting out of our comfort zone actually feels good once we get through it, and that getting through it is part of the human experience. And I mean, it's what makes me feel really good.
Very true. Very true. So, speaking about entrepreneurship, if you can go back in time to the beginning of your journey, what has been one thing that you have learned up until this point that you wish you knew when you first started the journey?
That it's going to take a bit longer than I think it's going to. That was the hard thing, that you just stick with it and you keep going.
Yeah.
And unless you have like a huge investment to put into it, it takes a bit longer than you anticipate, that I anticipate. Or, of course, I'm an instant gratification kind of person. So it was really hard to see how slowly it was built. But once you hit the momentum and you hit like a certain, for me, it was like year 6 or 7, where it was like, boom, then all of a sudden I found my mojo. And that's when I started working less hours. And so for me, it's like, I wish I would have known to enjoy it rather than push so dang hard. And to every day remind myself that I enjoy it. And that if I'm not enjoying it, it's time to take a break and go find some way to enjoy myself, because my best work comes out when I'm truly energized and I've taken good care of myself and I can think clearly and I'm not exhausted. I mean, all those things, it's not just for our body, but it's really for our business too, because I know that I don't think properly if I'm not taking care of myself. And I start then again going back to, I have to do all the hard things rather than really leaning into my gifts and honoring my gifts.
So you are on the Fearless Fridays podcast. How are you living a fearless life?
Oh, how am I living a fearless life? I don't know if there's ever a fearless, but it's more about me managing my fear and trusting myself is what I would say. It's trusting Fridays. Trust myself Fridays. So I trust that whatever comes up, that I'm going to handle it in the best way I possibly can. And that comes from, a lot of self-validation and not worrying about what other people think or what other people feel about what's going on for me.
So where can our, audience and listeners connect with you, learn more about you, and get a copy of your book?
Yes, you can go to Christina-Smith.com, that my website is there, or you can go to inviting.shift.com where the podcast is, and you can get a toolkit. I wanted to put something out there that everybody can kind of tap into their confidence, whether they're an entrepreneur, a woman, a man, a teenager. It really doesn't matter. The confidence toolkit works for everybody, but it's at Christina-Smith.com/toolkit. So that's your little free gift. I hope that everybody tunes into it, because there are some really great tools in there about how we self-validate and we start really, tapping into our gifts rather than always looking at what we need to fix about ourselves, because I think that really can drag us down. My tagline is always be kind with your humanness, be gentle with it. Being human we're not robots. It's not a magic formula. We all have our own different journeys, and just be gentle with yourself.
I love that. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. If you're not already following us on social media, come join the Fearless community at MRD Empowerment Solutions on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website, MaryanN-Rivera-Dannert.com. I'll catch you next week with a new episode, and remember that you are a priority and you matter.